Alright guys, welcome to the first episode of Let's Talk Technicals. So during this episode, what I tried to do is look at the chart, say on the weekend, and do a focus as to what is most likely going to happen on this currency pairs, and see if there's a possibility for us to get in on, say, buy or sell during the upcoming week. And I like starting my analysis on the DXY. So the reason I picked the DXY as a starting point is because if you analyze the DXY properly, it gives you an idea as to what's happening with the basket of currencies. So if you have your analysis spot on the DXY, you're like 80% close to having a good setup on the basket of currencies. So if the DXY is going to the upside and you look at the other currency pairs which are negatively correlated to the DXY, there's a high probability you might get a good selling opportunity on those pairs. And if the DXY is going to the downside, and then you look at pairs which are positively correlated to the DXY as well, and you might have a good possibility of having sells to the downside, which just goes along with the DXY. So all right, let's look at the DXY real quick. So with the DXY, if you've been watching the DXY closely, so this is the daily time frame. We've had price move to the upside. We've had a period of consolidation, another move to the upside. There's a period of consolidation and another move to the upside, consolidation around this point, and then a move to the upside. So at this point, just looking at the DXY, there are two things that can happen, or let's say three things that can happen. The DXY can probably consolidate here. That's one possibility, which we don't want because we need these prices to move. We need the volatility as well. So the other opportunities will be for the DXY to either move to the upside or move to the downside. Now, if the DXY has to move to the upside, then I'll look at other currency pairs which are negatively correlated to the DXY, and then I'll look for selling opportunities. And other currency pairs which are positively correlated to the DXY, you look for opportunities to go long as well. So personally, looking at the DXY from the level of 104, so when we got to, once we pop into this zone, we had price test this area for a very long time. This is the daily time frame, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So it tested this area for 5 days, and then we had to move to the upside. So as of now, my bias on the DXY is still bullish. I still have a bullish bias on the DXY, and let's put this real quick. If we add a trend line on this, like so, we have prices moving to the upside and it's still respecting this area. And so right now prices at this point. So if this area has to hold and prices move again to the upside, then we'll go on other time frame, on other currency pairs, and look for selling opportunities. However, if the DXY eventually violates this uptrend, like a proper violation, then we might see the DXY drop into the downside. And if it has to drop to the downside, the first point of interest for me is 104, this area right here. And if it has to move to the upside, respecting this trend line, the first point of interest for me is 105. So having this at the back of my mind, I'll step down to lower time frames just to see if the picture becomes clearer for me. Give me a minute, guys. So I need this on lower time frames as well. Keep this right here. So let's look at the 8-hour time frame. Clear this. So on the 8-hour time frame, now the picture becomes clearer and it's much better for us to get this analysis spot on. So let's focus on what's been happening here, for example. So when price got into this zone, say 104 and 105, we had to pull back to this area with price holding here. So there was that consolidation around that point. So there was a difficulty for price to go past this area right here. So the next thing I'm looking at right now is this point here. So with price trading around this point, all I'm looking for is what's the reaction around this point? Is price finding it difficult to move to the downside? And if price is finding it difficult to move to the downside, then there's a high possibility for price to go to 105. So let's put a few things. So on the 8-hour time frame, it might be difficult for us to dissect what is actually happening here. But if we step down to lower time frame, like the 4-hour time frame, or maybe the hourly time frame. So if we step down to the hourly time frame, it becomes clearer. So on the hourly time frame, this is what I've been looking at. So I've been looking at the DXY during the previous week, and there's that difficulty for price to go past this point. And that's why my bias on the DXY is still bullish. So I still have a bullish bias on the DXY. So first of all, we have this trend from the daily time frame. So we have this trend line from the daily time frame, which tells me price is still going to the upside, and this trend line hasn't been violated. So I need a proper violation for me to say, all right, price is like the move to the upside is over. I need a proper violation and then price trading outside this trend line. So looking at the DXY presently, say on the hourly time frame, there's no reason for me to change my bias from bullish to bearish. So we've had price put in highs and lows up until this point, and there's that difficulty to go past this point. So if price is finding it difficult to go past this point, then I'm expecting price to rally back to the upside and test, say, 105. And if eventually the DXY has to drop, we might get prices rally up to these areas like so. It might test this point, it might end at areas like this before dropping to the downside. So that's another possibility. And let's look at it again from this point. So just looking at the most recent price action, we had prices moving to the downside. Then we had this multiple areas of rejection around this point, and then price popped to the upside. Now it's very okay for a pullback to come in like this, and then you see prices rally again to the upside. So that's why I still have a bullish bias on the DXY. So if we put a trend line here, for example, I think I was looking at this last week as well. So you had this trend line here, and you had price moving to the downside. Then a similar thing happened, but this happened on a psychological number, which is very, very powerful. So we had difficulty for price to move to the downside. It was very difficult for price to go past this point. Then we had a move to the upside. We had this test, and then that was the outcome. So a similar thing is happening again around this point. The only difference is this happened around a psychological number, which is more powerful, and this is happening around a trend line, which is just added confluence as well. So when you look at this piece of price action here, it's quite similar to what is happening here. And 1 minute. So you had this. So you had to move to the downside, difficulty, break, test, and then a pop to the upside. We've had to move to the downside as well. There's that difficulty here. There's a pop, there's a test. So now I'm expecting prices to go to the upside. So my bullish bias on the DXY stays the same, and I always switch to a bearish bias if price fails to go back into this area and stuff like that, or price actually comes in here, finds it difficult to go past this point, and then eventually it drops to the downside. So it's a lot that's going to happen, and it's going to take time. But then, guys, you need to allow prices to play out. You need to give prices an opportunity for it to show you what it's trying to do, and let prices come to you. Don't force it. So if price finds it difficult to go into this area, and then that's fine as well. So personally, guys, I want to position myself in with two possibilities. So if the bullish run has to continue with prices moving to the upside, then what currency pairs am I going to trade? So if the DXY is moving to the upside, are there other currency pairs that are showing me opportunities for me to take selling opportunities on? And if the DXY fails to continue with its bullish run, are there other currency pairs I'm looking at to go with the buy if the DXY decides to go to the downside? So just to cap up on this, if the DXY has to go to the upside, personally, I'm looking at 105. And if it has to drop to the downside, I'm looking at 104. So with this in mind, let's look at other currency pairs. So I have a bullish bias on the DXY. So if the DXY has to continue moving to the upside, I'm looking at currency pairs like, well, let's look at US30, for example. US30 is very interesting as well because we had prices moving to the upside. There was that difficulty to go past this point, and I'm expecting prices to drop to 38,000, like so. So if you boil down on the on US30 as well, because from this time frame it might be a little bit difficult for you to see everything that's happening, but one thing I like to use is the trend line again. If you put this trend line right here, like so, I'll make sure it appears on lower time frames as well. So if you have this trend line right here and you start moving to lower time frames, the picture becomes clearer again. So we've been looking at US30, and we actually we took a sell on US30 already somewhere here. So we took a sell already. So on US30, we had prices going to the upside, respecting this trend line, and then eventually prices dropped to the downside. And this is a major concern. So if you have prices going to the upside and then you have a drop to the downside, you must ask yourself, why is this happening? So there's that question mark. So after that, we had prices pull back up, and there was that difficulty to go past this point. So when you combine this with a DXY, for example, when you combine this with a DXY, and we're expecting the DXY to move to the upside, and we're expecting the DXY to continue its move to the upside, then I'm more confident with my selling opportunities on US30. So I'm more comfortable with my selling opportunities on US30 because I know there's a possibility as well for US30 to drop to an area like this. And that's because US30 is negatively correlated to the DXY. So again, if you look at the distance that the DXY might travel if it has to move to the upside, we're looking at a distance like this. And that's enough, because if the DXY rallies to the upside, there's a high possibility US30 is going to drop to the downside as well. So there's a lot about US30 that gives me a lot of confidence. So the first thing is, when we had this move to the upside, we had a bullish run, and there was that difficulty around this point to go past this area. And that's why I did highlight this point, because I've been watching this and there was that difficulty to go past this point, and then we had a move to the downside, another difficulty to go past this point. So it's a no-brainer at this point to say there's a high possibility that US30 is going to drop to the downside. So I'm looking at 38,000. So let's look at NAS100. NAS100 is similar to what's happening on, it has a similar move to what's happening on US30. So again, if the DXY has to move to the upside, there's enough room for us to play to the upside. Then we're looking at NAS100 as well, and there's enough room for NAS100 to drop to say 17,000. Guys, there's a lot of movement, and you can do a lot, like you can make a lot from that movement, and that's just because we've analyzed the DXY and we're using it to our advantage. So let's look at this in terms of price action and what's happening. So personally, you see prices going to the upside, there's a pullback, price goes to the upside and then it pulls back, price goes to the upside, it pulls back, and then it comes back, and there's that difficulty. So that's really a question mark for me, and there's certain things I keep looking at and asking myself. If price was been moving to the upside, so if this momentum was to the upside, why is it difficult for price to make another high at this point? So this was a point of concern for me, this area right here. it was a point of concern. So I was looking at this area like so, and I had a lot of questions like, if you really want to continue to the upside, why is it difficult for you to go past this point? And then if you add a trend line on this, it just makes it better, because personally I do my trend line like this. So when you add a trend line on this, now you see there is a break, or there's that violation and price moving to the downside, and you've had prices rallying up, and there's that difficulty. So when you combine this again with the DXY, if the DXY has to move to the upside, then this should drop to the downside. Now if you didn't get in around this point, it might be a little bit too, it might be late for you to get in here, because if you get in here, your stops might go around here, and that's not a good risk to reward. So what you can do is probably wait for price to give you another pullback or something, then you look for another entry. All right, so that's it for NAS100. Let's look at the S&P real quick. The S&P500, NAS100, and US30, they have a similar play currently. So with this one as well, we've had prices moving to the upside, then so each time it has a pullback, it makes this massive move. It has a pullback, it has this massive move, it does this, and then there's that difficulty again. The question mark, guys, comes in. Why is it difficult for you to go past this point? And this is happening around this psychological number right here at 5,000. So price is finding it so difficult to go past this psychological number of 5,000. So each time price goes through, it comes back inside, it goes through, and right now it's coming back below 5,000. So my bias on S&P500 is this will probably rally all the way down to 4,800. Worst case scenario, we should get the S&P drop to a level like this. And again, that's a lot of that movement is massive, and you can do a lot if you go in properly, good risk to reward and everything. You should get a lot from that movement. So let's add one thing on this one. So on, yep, like so. Let's add one thing on this one. So on the S&P 500 compared to NAS100 and US30, so if I had to pick, say, one currency pair to go with the sales, I'm already in on the sales on US30. But if I had to add another position, say not on US30, let's say between NAS100 and S&P 500, I'll rather go with NAS100 compared to the S&P 500. Yes, there's a difficulty for price to go past this point on the S&P 500, but the only thing that keeps me on my toes, or that it keeps me a little bit cautious on the S&P 500, is the fact that we haven't really taken off. Like, I don't think the sales are ready just yet, because we still have this trend line like so. So if the S&P 500 did something like this, then it becomes easy for us to look for those selling opportunities. So I know there's a possibility for the S&P 500 to sell, but right now we're still like in the territory of the buyers as well. So there's a high possibility that price can just stall around this point, and then we see a move to the upside. And that's it, guys. It's a probability thing, so you can't be too sure of what you're looking at. So price, you might say price is going to drop, and then eventually it just goes to the upside. So you need to keep an open mind as well. So I'm a little bit cautious taking sales on S&P 500. Yes, it's actually headed to the downside, but to be on the safe side, I'll wait for this to break and then probably give me a test and then a drop, and I'll look at areas like this to get out first. And if we clear this area, and then maybe we'll get down to this part. So that's the first thing. So if we look at the DXY again, the second opportunity on the DXY, if the DXY decides to go to the downside, So if the DXY decides to sell, let's look at other currency pairs that might give us good opportunities as well. So looking at GU, so GU might be a little bit difficult now because all you see here on GU is a period of consolidation and stuff like that. So you might get confused, but if you look at it critically, and there's other things we can do like break down what price has been doing here to actually make informed decisions. But let's just go with what we're seeing as of now. So price moved from 27,500 to say 2,500, like so. Yes, price didn't actually get to this point, but this is the move I've been looking at. So there is this difficulty for price to go past this point. So you had this massive drop, and then you've had price move to the upside, it comes back down, and there's that difficulty around this point. So looking at GBPUSD at this point, there is that difficulty. And again, guys, we're just going off of what is happening again on the DXY. We're using the DXY to our advantage. So if there's a difficulty for price to make lows again, so you see price is finding it difficult to go past this point. So if it's difficult for prices to go past this point, then it's most likely the price is going to rally all the way to areas like this. So with GU, let's see if we can add something here. Let's see. Yeah, so with GU, guys, I think it might be also a little bit difficult to go in now. So if I had to take a buyer position on GU, I'll probably wait for this to actually trade outside, give me a pullback, and then we'll look for something like that. Yeah, so that's it for GU. Let's look at gold. So gold is actually at a very good point. So let's look at the daily time frame first of all. So if you look at gold on the daily time frame, again, it's simple. You've had prices making highs and lows, and currently price is trading on a psychological number, which is 2000. And if the DXY has to drop to the downside, I'm looking at something like gold, and it's actually at a very good point for me to take buys to the upside. So that's something. So gold is something I'll be watching out for during the coming week to see if there's a possibility for me to get in on a buy position. So I didn't get in on the buy position already because yes, price is finding it difficult to go past this point, like so. So we need to scale like to lower time frames and see if there's a possibility for us to go in. And I think it might just be a little bit too risky now to take a buy position on gold, simply because we still have prices moving to the downside like this. And as per the way I trade, I'm going to wait for prices to break and then maybe something like this. So I'm going to sit aside with gold, and I'm just going to watch it and see what happens eventually. So let's look at GEM40 real quick. Again, GEM40 is like, this is another good pair for me. And that's if the DXY has to move to the downside. If the DXY has to move to the downside, then I'll be looking for buying opportunities on this. And this is simple because all I'm waiting for is just price to test areas like this, which is 117,000, and then we see a move to the upside. Now, if you scale down to lower time frames, say like 4 hours, let me use the hourly time frame because yeah. So if you use the hourly time frame, it gives you a better view of it. So personally on GEM40, if the DXY has to move to the downside again, then I'm looking at this and I'm expecting prices to kind of test areas like this, and you might see a trend that's building up to the downside like so. When it gets violated, we'll look for prices to go to the upside. So that's another one. So silver as well. Silver has it's right at a good spot as well. So if the DXY has to drop again to the downside, I'm looking at silver, and this will be a pair where I'll be expecting a pullback maybe to 23,000 like so, and then we'll look for an opportunity to go to the upside. Let's look on the 4-hour time frame to see, and maybe the hourly time frame. Yeah. So if we look on the hourly time frame, and I'm expecting a move to the upside if the DXY keeps dropping, then we'll expect prices to say pull back to areas like this, and then we'll look for opportunities to go long. So that's it, guys. So if the DXY moves to the upside, continues moving to the upside, then I'm looking at this, which we already in this position. We took a sell around here, and we might get in on another position on NAS100. If we get a pullback, we'll look for those entries. For the S&P500, we need a proper break and get a pullback, and then we'll get a drop. However, because it's a probability thing, if the DXY continue moving to the downside, and if this bullish run fails, I'm looking at things like gold. I'm looking for a break, retest, and then we'll move to the upside. German 40, expect prices to go down, break again, move to the upside. And for silver, maybe a push to areas like this, and then a move to the upside. So keep an eye out, for US30, NAS100, S&P 500, because I'm still bullish on the DXY. So I need to actually see the DXY fail. I need to see the DXY fail, trade outside this, and then a drop like this for me to switch my bias from a bullish to a bearish bias. So guys, keep an eye out for US30, NAS100, S&P 500. I'm looking at these ones, like I'm heavy on these ones. And if it doesn't work, because this is my go-to, this is the preferred one for me. If it doesn't work, then I'll look at things like gold, GU, German 40, and silver to see if I have opportunities to go long as well. All right, guys, use the comment section. Tell me what pairs are you looking out for for the upcoming week, and let's get to talk. All right, guys, see you during the next one. Bye for now.